I want to focus on the U.S. role here in the IMF, and that's a little bit redundant because in this hemisphere especially, the U.S. Treasury Department is the dominant voice in the IMF, to say the least. And oh good, somebody's going to be doing the slides. I brought PowerPoint. As we know, they signed a deal with the IMF in June of last year, the largest IMF loan ever, $56.3 billion. One of the nice things, there aren't really nice things about having an IMF agreement. One of the nice things for people from the outside of having an IMF agreement is that it actually says what they're going to do and why they're doing it, and provides projections for what's going to happen. So you can really see how they went wrong. And we're all economists here on this panel, and any of us could go into great detail on how these mistakes actually worked in the way that they did. But I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I really want to focus on what people here can do and the Congress can do. But we'll take a little look at it. They had a plan. The plan was they were going to restore market confidence, and this would resolve the various crises in the economy, the capital flight, the peso depreciation, the inflation, which was attributable, a good part of it, to that, and everything else, and the economy could restart. That was the center piece of their thing. It's all about restoring market confidence, and the other things would follow. Go ahead. And it didn't work. So this was in June, and October is just a few months later. They had to drastically change their projections for the economy. And let's take a quick look. You can't see this that well, but for example, they thought that the economy was going to grow last year, and it actually shrank by 2.5%. You can see it on the right-hand side. And of course, they lowered it right away too. But look at inflation also. They thought inflation for this year would come down to 17%, and it's at least 3 times that as of yesterday, and the rate it's going at. And then you had interest rates, which they said would come down. The policy rate, the short-term policy rate, was 22.5%. It's supposed to be 22.5% this year, and it's at 83% as of yesterday. And then there's public debt, which increased, which was supposed to come down to 61% this year, and it's already listed at 86, but I think it's actually more than that. So this is really wrong. And why was it wrong? Again, we could spend an hour on that, but I'll just give you 1 or 2 reasons. The ones that are most common for the IMF to do wrong. And this is this concept of expansionary austerity. You're in a recession, and you're somehow going to do things which Econ 101 tells you will shrink the economy, but they're going to restore so much confidence that the economy will actually grow. There's almost no cases of this ever happening, but they still try and do it. And so it made everything worse. And then in October, they doubled down by tightening both the budget, the fiscal policy, and the tighter monetary policy. Next one. So yeah, they set a primary deficit that's ignoring interest payments. 1.3% of GDP went to zero. So in other words, from a deficit of 1.3%, they were supposed to go to zero for that. And then a surplus of 1% for 2020. So this is a fiscal contraction. As I said, it's comparable to what you had in Greece and Spain. The IMF was involved in those too. In their budget cutting following the 2009 world recession. If we go take a look at the impact of that, there's a fiscal tightening of 3.9% of GDP over 2 years. Economists would expect that would shrink the economy by about 5.1%. And so, that's what really makes this mess so bad, is because, and you can't get out of it, because you're doing this to the economy. Where is it has the opposite effect on economic actors, not just investors, but everyone sees this as a recession that's just going to continue until the IMF goes away. And that's what happened actually from 1998 to 2002, when they had the most depression that was comparable to our Great Depression in terms of lost output and unemployment. And that was under IMF supervision as well. So there's a terrible rerun here. So, and then they tightened monetary policy as well, very severely. Next one. So, yeah, I already said that. We go one more. And this is the kind of thing that the IMF has been involved in many countries. And as a result, the IMF lost most of its influence in middle-income countries in the 21st century, but now it's coming back, especially in Latin America, in Argentina, Ecuador, and Honduras. And what can Congress do? That's what I want to get to. Because Congress has done things in the past. So, as I mentioned, the U.S. is a major voice inside the inside the IMF. In fact, here, next slide, you can see it, I think. There's the blue, the dark blue is the U.S. and its allies in the IMF. So this is a big problem. For those of us who care about the rest of the world, the problem is this is supposed to be an institution of global governance with 189 member countries. But imagine we had an actual oligarchy here in the United States where the votes really were proportional to how much money you had, like legally, okay? That's kind of what you've got. And so the decisions being made for most of the rest of the world are really being made by the United States and its allies. In Europe, it's a little different because, the European countries insist on having a voice for themselves when the IMF is involved in Europe. But that's the story for the world. And this is a problem. But we can move up a little here. The Congress actually has enormous potential to reform the IMF because of this power of the United States. And it has very occasionally used it. In 1998, and this was after the IMF became infamous for the first time in the world because of its intervention in the Asian financial crisis, which ruined a whole number of economies. And also it was beginning its intervention in the Depression, exacerbating the Depression in Argentina. So Congress mandated, in order to get the money from the U.S. government that the IMF was going to get, it mandated, and it held up the money for quite a while, the Congress did, and then they got a commission called the Meltzer Commission, and they proposed a number of reforms, and some of them were actually implemented. It's the first time in my life that you really saw actual reforms where some of the abuses of the IMF were reduced or eliminated. For example, in Indonesia, in the Asian crisis, they put like 150 conditions on the government to receive their loans, which many of them were destructive and unnecessary. And so they cut those down after the Meltzer Commission, and it had a serious impact. 2000 to 2002 was another one example where the World Bank, together with the IMF, because they operate together, that's part of their power, right? They have the institutions are appointed by the rich countries and they operate together. So for 15 years, they were forcing poor countries in Africa to charge user fees for primary health care and primary education. And because of the US Congress acting during that time, they had to eliminate that. And it took a big fight, as you can imagine. But they did it, and some of it's come back. But for millions of people got to go to school. For example, elementary school in Africa because of that change, because of what the Congress did to stop them from doing this. So there's all kinds of things the U.S. Congress can do. All we need is a couple of offices, congressional offices that are willing to take the lead, as they did before in 1998 and 2002. And also in 2009, there was a big fight over the aid as well. And you'll find, if any of you are involved in this or get involved in it, find there aren't a lot of people who will stand up and defend the IMF. In fact, if you go to the web, you can see me debating IMF economists during the European crisis for years, and they're agreeing with me, okay? The research department, a lot of the research department is, and the videos are there, you can watch them. And why do they agree? Because they learn basic economics and they know this stuff is wrong. And so you won't have a lot of defenders fighting and defending what the IMF is doing when they screw up these things that they do. So it really is possible. And finally, good, I have 1 minute, and that's just what I need. There's also the foreign policy aspect of this too. The United States was involved. The United States has governments that it likes and doesn't like, doesn't want in Latin America, and in the 21st century, a whole number of independent governments were elected, and especially in South America, that had they formed institutions even, like UNASUR and the Union of South American Nations, that increased their independence. And the United States government mostly fought kind of a containment and rollback battle. And here you can see they did it in Argentina too. They blocked loans actually to Argentina under the prior government at the Inter-American Development Bank. They also intervened at the World Bank. And then we had a court decision here, which was quite harmful to Argentina. It was unprecedented, it was dubious, and it was politically motivated. You can see that from the opinions that the Judge Gutierrez himself wrote. This contributed greatly to the troubles that Cecilia described, because it basically took 90% of Argentina's creditors hostage on behalf of the vulture funds. And you can say, well, that's just a court in the U.S., but that court was politically motivated, and there were things the federal government did as well to support that. So these are the things that also have to change and can change, and the Congress can play a role in more than in any other country that I know. The legislature here has a role in foreign policy and can change that foreign policy as well to reduce the harm that our government causes, not only in Argentina, but in Latin America generally. Thank you very much.